Today I'm changing out the studs on my Triumph Spitfire. The reason I'm changing the studs out is because the alloy wheels I got only gave me 4.5 turns on the 3/8 inch stock stud, and I just don't think that was enough. Other reasons for doing this is a lot of racers use a bigger stud. The studs I'm using are studs off of a Freelander, a Land Rover Freelander. And these are quite popular. If you Google it with Spitfire, you'll see a lot of examples of it. Here is an example of the difference in size. And as you can see, the gold one, which is a 10mm, is the Freelander stud, and the factory stud is the one that's next to it. Quite a bit difference in diameter and in length. I'm mostly looking for the length. The bases are very similar. I'll have some other pictures of those later on. The tool you need, which is, it's referred to as a Churchill tool because that's what the company that made the thing in the UK was. They're no longer really available, but people make their own. You can buy some through a number of places. I had a friend make this one for me. It's a little bit overkill. We used a 1-inch bolt to be the pusher, and it basically looks like this. You'll see this in operation later as we put it on the car. But for right now, this is what it looks like. One thing to do is lubricate the threads with anti-seize. It's a good lubricant and it'll keep it smooth and not locking up. And also lubricate the tip with some antifreeze. That will help also. Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the next step, which is to get this under the car and start pulling things off. Okay, we've got the wheel off. I figure everybody knows how to do that. So the first thing we have to do is pull off this big nut. I'm going to use an electric impact. I use this all the time if I can. Sometimes things are too tight and then I break down and use the actual air ones. Well, that came off pretty good, but I didn't expect anything else. It also has a big washer. That's fine. The other thing is you peel off, you may have to loosen up your actual parking brake to get it off. But now we have the original lugs and everything else, and here's our puller. We'll run this out so that we have it going like so. And then we basically have to slip on washers, and I would buy separate nuts for this instead of trying to use the lug nuts because they're flatter, but you're never going to need them. You just have to be tight enough to keep everything flat. And what I will do is, after I give it the first hit with the impact wrench to try to pull it off, is I will come back and snug them again because it seems like they loosen up for some reason. Okay, we're good for a second. And here we go. We got that in place. Got everything else. This happens to be 1.5 inches, whatever size you need. And basically set it up so that you're turning it on, not spinning it off. And we'll see if we can get it to go with this one. Well, as expected, it didn't. There's one other thing to try. It's called the hammer. And since it's got a lot of tension in it, sometimes this can cause it to break loose. But not this time. So now I'm going to break out the air tools. And it just happens to have quite a bit more torque. So here we go. things can get tight. So see if that helps a little bit. Heat can work too. Okay, that should do it. See, the reason here is that when it does fly, it'll only move about 1/4 of an inch instead of the wall behind me. Okay, pause. Okay, I ran out of air. My air compressor had blown a circuit breaker in itself, so we're back and we'll see if we can get this going. It popped. As you can see, it does take a lot of work. And the joys of it having been on here for quite a few years, but it came loose. It would have popped the first time if I'd had more air. So. I fried some threads on that, but should be enough left. Okay, but here's the piece. We'll move over now to the workbench and I'll start popping the studs out. Now I'm going to basically remove the old studs and replace them with the new studs. I'm using a press. You could use a hammer, because these things fall out pretty easy, or you could use a vise and a socket to back things up. See, like right there, that's the old one out. That went pretty smooth. These are never really tight. And then take the new stud, like so. Make sure you put it in the right direction. Always ruins your day. And I use a bigger socket. Let my jack up a touch. I got my bigger socket. Some people pull them on with a bunch of washers and a nut. I tend to just like to push them on. I think that's better. And I just push them till they're nice and tight. So, and now you can see they're in, and they come in pretty close to being about the same height as the others. It's a little taller, but not enough to worry about. But boy, look at the difference. Isn't that something? That'll pretty much help you out. So we'll move on, and I'll show you my last step. I'll push the others on separately. Okay, since I told you earlier I had some problems with some spinning. It looked like some of the previous studs, the knurling was worn off, like it had rotated a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just tack weld each of the studs to make sure they can't spin. To be able to remove them means I'll have to grind them down to get them back off again, but that's not a big problem. So here we go, folks. Guess when your props fall on you, that's a problem. Okay. Okay, as you can see, what I've done is put just a couple little tacks on these to keep them from rotating. And not a big deal, not really required. It's just something I thought I'd do because the last thing I think I'd ever want is to have one of these things start spinning on me, and then I have no idea how I'd ever get it off after that. It would be almost required to cut the wheel off. So. And this doesn't hurt, and these are so tough now, they're going to be good. I'm always going to use a little lock, anti-lock, anti-seize on them, so that'll help. Okay, I'm continuing with my repair of my boogered up shaft. What I'm going to be using is a rethreading die. It's different from a tapping die in that it doesn't really cut threads. It's just designed to clean threads up. These are actually a little better to use than a cutting thread because it's not really designed to do the cutting part. Just straighten the threads out and make it much nicer. And it seems to be doing the trick. Always best to get the right tool for the job. And in this case, this is. I had to purchase this special for this project, but I'll use it some other time, I imagine. Okay, good deal. I'm going to run it all the way down. Okay, we got a pretty good shot here. There we go. How about that? Okay. And cleaned it up quite nice. Didn't take a lot of meat off. Didn't really want to do that. Now let's see how the nuts go. See, that's the way we should have it. Much better. So we're sitting good. I should clean it off with a little cleaner. I'll do that and continue with the job. Okay, I'm continuing. I'm going to now replace the parts we took off. This looks familiar. Basically our fitted hub. And it should slide on pretty easy. But as you've seen from the past, sometimes things don't go as smooth as expected. There we go. Actually, that went in much easier than I expected. And the big washer, then a nice new nut. Okay, now we're going to try to drive it the rest of the way on. I'm going to use the impact just because we will torque it on later. Now it's back on. I will, the next step I will demo is I will put the thing down, take it off the jack stands and the jack, put the tires back down on the ground, and proceed to have it torque both the lug nuts as well as the big nut when the tire can give me some resistance so that it won't spin. This needs to be brought up to 120 foot-pounds according to the Haynes manual. And the bigger bolts, the bigger studs, I expect that they're going to be up around, probably the originals were 35. I'm not going to go silly about it. I think I'm going to step it up to maybe 60 and see how that works. And keep my eye on them, make sure they don't do it. The same size studs on a C6 Corvette are torqued to 100 pounds, but I don't really think that's required for what I'm doing. It kind of bothers me to go that big. So that's where we stand, and next time you'll see the tires and wheels will be back on, and we'll finish off the torquing. Okay, next step is to finish things off. First what I'm going to do is torque the big bolt on the center. It's my trusty Craftsman torque wrench. The way I keep everything from moving is I just put a piece of wood here. It's a 2x8 in front of the tire, so it will give it some room. Set the torque wrench at 120, and that made it happy. And then I'm going to bring the lugs up to about 50 or 60. Always cross your pattern when you're torquing your lugs. And then make another run because they will come down a little bit further. I tend to do it till I get any movement. So that pretty much does it.